you're getting one piece of feedback,
Yeah.
right? You're not getting feedback at scale. And so the squeaky wheel bias, the challenge is you may be listening to the loudest voice or like customer reviews, right? You're listening, typically customers write a review because they either absolutely love something or absolutely hate something, right? And you're not necessarily getting what does your market at scale, what does your customer at scale really think about that? And that's where research flow is really solving that for marketers, is being able to give this context at scale. So you still get the quantitative and your ability to be really confident in um, I think the scale and where the feedback is going, but then you get all that rich context to say, okay, I see what's happening in the data, but I don't understand why.
Hey everyone, this is Tech Marketing Rewired, and I'm your host, Kevin Kerner. My guest today is Malinda Sandman, VP and Head of Global Marketing at Typeform. Typeform has been one of the most recognizable names in form for a decade, trusted by over 150,000 customers and 95% of the Fortune 500. Melinda's leading the push into AI now, with 2 new products out in the last 2 months, and getting the market to see Typeform as more than the form builder that they already know. This one's part of the Pass the Pilot series. It's a series where we ask senior marketers what they're doing now that AI experiments are over, and Malinda answered that quite well. So this is a fun one. Let's get into it. This is Tech Marketing Rewired. Malinda, great to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I was very excited to talk to you, as you know, from the couple conversations that we've had. I am a big Typeform fan. I know you guys have been around forever. And it's just really interesting nowadays. Like voice and data is context, and it's the more information I can get, even transcript data, forms and those type of things. It just becomes so useful. I don't know in your daily workflow, but in mine, I'm always like hitting the download MD file button on everything these days.
AI has completely changed the game.
Yeah.
That's on the ability, I think, to be able to get that rich context on everything. So same. It's the how do I get as much information as possible and then figure out how to get those quick insights.
Yeah, and making it easy. So you guys have done some of that. So I've followed you guys since you launched probably in the tens, 2012, I think, or so.
Okay.
150,000 customers, maybe more at this point, 95% of the Fortune 500. It's such a cool heritage brand that began as a better Google Forms, and now it's sort of building into neat things. I'd love your take on the market environment you're playing in, how things have changed, and some of the new stuff that you guys are announcing just now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the market has changed so dramatically. I think even in the past month, right? It
Yeah,
changes.
right. Yeah.
So, but I think that our vision, and I think our heritage is still so relevant to marketers and to businesses. Ultimately, it's around the heart of how do you get closer to your customers. So one of our beliefs is when asking feels human, people share better answers. And I think kind of that belief and that philosophy is so much is the heart of this kind of human first design, the conversational forms that Typeform innovated. But it goes back to the end of the day, the job to be done and the use case and how we can help marketers, businesses, right? A whole host of researchers, product managers, right? A whole host of different roles in companies be able to get closer to their customers. Like that ethos is still there. And now with what has happened with what AI can do, it just allows us to now grow in our applicability and use cases to these customers.
Yeah.
And in kind of in 2 ways in particular, I've been at Typeform since August, so I'm almost at a year, and it's been great to kind of really dig in there and see, what are people really using Typeform for? And kind of the 2 things that keep coming up, customer feedback is one of our biggest use cases. And so that's been kind of as we've been evolving is really thinking around now what's available, because obviously in 2012 and even a few years ago, right, this wasn't available. What can we now do to be able to supercharge customer feedback for our customers? The other one would be kind of lead gen, right? And how do you kind of grow your customer base? And that's also been a big application to really just be more to our customers.
On the research flow side, from a product perspective. I mean, that market seems to be something that's growing, and there are quite a few AI moderated sort of qualitative research companies that are out. Um, so now you have, you're in this research flow space, qualitative research space, and you're competing with these AI native companies that are coming out, even though you have the install base, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, like as a CMO, how you're thinking about the levers that you pull to, I guess, compete with that market dynamic, especially with all these AI native companies coming into this stuff.
So I think that is a competitive advantage in how we think about kind of how do we position ourselves against these AI native companies. But yeah, it is definitely it is a great opportunity and a great challenge to think about how do we approach this in a different way, right? We're founded in Barcelona. We have a globally distributed workforce. So we're not, a Silicon Valley a native tech company, but I think that gives us a real advantage to come to the market. And like you said, we have this incredible customer base. We've been around for a while. We have that brand recognition. So it's that blessing and that curse to be able to now evolve and change perception, but still really grounded in what are people using Typeform for
Yeah.
originally, right? And so it's that next step of these incredible forums and surveys, right, and quizzes that get you access to this data. But now we can take it a step further and be able to really democratize, right, access to that context.
It's such a miss thing. So many people miss on the product side and the product marketing side, the research angle. Like they go right into the product. It's like, oh, we have a great idea. So many people don't go like the research angle. It seems like you guys would because your forms generally are used for research, and so it kind of leads you in that direction. But are there any interesting things that you found in the research that drove you in a direction from a marketing perspective, either messaging perspective or channel perspective, ICP, like anything that you found that was surprising, or maybe even solidified the path you were going down?
Honestly, we are in this iteration phase right now. So
Hmm.
when you research flow, we launched it in beta in May as part of our spring release. And so right now we have our hypotheses. And
Hmm.
that's actually some of the fun part is like we are using the product on our own. We were actually, I just met with my team and we were talking around creating a messaging house for research flow. And I asked,
Cool.
I'm assuming we can use research flow to be able to go out and see, right, what's really
Yeah.
resonating. And that really, and so we kind of laughed. We're like, absolutely. I think that's where, when you talk about kind of the unlock for marketers, I've always been, a lot of my background is more on the web and more on kind of the product conversion funnel. So I've sat really close with a lot of product teams and a lot of UX designers and researchers, and this ability now to be able to unlock this combination of qualitative and quantitative. So the work that I've done in my past is how do you use kind of the qualitative? How do you get really close to what your customers? You've got maybe 5 different hypotheses, narrow it down, right? And then you can get into A/B experimentation. That's where I think that kind of thought process and that methodology is what I'm kind of bringing to the marketing team and thinking around, all right, how do we can even use our own product now to be able to get more of that contextual insights and then be able to go and test it from a quantitative perspective as well. But yeah, we're in terms of kind of how we're thinking of it, it feels very meta in that we're using our own product to be able
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
right, like how we want to go to market. But that's really where we are. We have a hypothesis of kind of really 2 core ICPs. And now what we're trying to do is trying to just get as much kind of signal and confirmation of, does one ICP more valuable than the other? Where is this market in general? I think, and also kind of looking competitively at where the other kind of AI monitored research tools are going, and who else is also in our base that's historically using Typeform.
Yeah, it's really, I think on the pre-call, I was talking about how we use voice data quite a bit now,
Mhm.
transcript data. Of course, we're using maybe a Google Doc that has questions in it, but we would rather get the voice data than the typed data. And I know you guys have video ask, you have all these other ways the AI can ask you the next question. But when you're in code, it's better to download that very vast transcript and MD file. Like if we put our transcript here into something, it's going to be better than me sending you a form that has you type out. And I'm curious whether that, I wonder how many people are know that yet. Do they really like do marketers know that? It's better to get, the rich transcript. Coders know it, developers know it for sure.
Great question and call out. That is what we are absolutely seeing in some of kind of our early data.
Hmm.
And what I think we know of, like you said, with Video Ask and with in our growth flow product, having the ability to do the video assisted forms, we see that in the effectiveness for our customers. So some of the early data that we're seeing is by having the video aspect of research flow, right, and having this AI moderator ask the questions in voice and video versus in text, we're seeing about 4.5 times more feedback per question in video versus text.
Yeah.
Also, that kind of nuance of then what do you get from kind of the emotional insight and how do you get
Hmm.
more that nuanced context? So we're seeing about 3 times the amount of insight there. And then probably more than anything else, the engagement is twice as long as a
Yeah.
search. So right, with the ability to kind of pull someone in, and I think that is the form could get you there, but then this next level with having the AI moderator is the AI moderator can change, right? And can
Yeah.
the next nuanced question as the interview keeps going to kind of keep that engagement out and really dig to the surface or dig deep into what truly is going on here to get, the marketer, the product manager, the research, right? The right amount of context that they need.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, it's like rambling. I think I mentioned on the pre-call too the idea of rambling. Like rambling is a thing that we're told not to do, and I do it a lot. But when just when we tell our clients when they're doing transcript for us, we're not going to watch the video. We're just going to listen to the words. So be as ramble as much as you want, as awkward as you want, because this video will never get seen, and it's really good context for us. So rich. It's really rich. I wonder, so you needed to message these new products. They're just coming out. So I guess I had forgotten that Research Flow is just in May. That's how did you take me through the thought process of how you message them? Because there's so much AI messaging out there. How did you how did you come up with messaging for the site? You knew you have a new site, or you added to the site, the Webflow site. I'd just be curious about your process to get messaging, at least the first level of messaging aligned.
Yeah, the first level. So that definitely was going out and trying to test with some audiences. But really, I think that kind of builds on our heritage, right? And our ability to, we know what the most valuable use cases were for Typeform using our heritage products. So if you're using form builders, how are our existing customers using form builders, surveys, quizzes, right? To be able to get that data. So I think we were able to see, through different case studies that we had, through different customer testimonials, how were they using Typeform and what were they really trying to accomplish? And then basically
Hmm.
building on top of that, right? What was and we had a fair amount of messaging that we could leverage from we launched Growth Flow in a couple different iterations over the last couple of years. And we also had launched Typeform AI,
Hmm.
which kind of is that underpinning across everything. And so we launched that kind of in earnest in GA last fall. So
Hmm.
that was the first big product release since
Yeah.
joining Form. And so I think as we were getting kind of feedback and seeing what was resonating in some of our paid media, seeing what was resonating across the website, and seeing kind of where we were getting, whether it was interaction or maybe we were getting better signups and conversion of how we message Typeform AI, we almost like fused those together
Hmm.
in a lot of
Yeah.
ways thinking of that. But I agree with you where we've debated this a lot is how do you make sure that you don't go too AI heavy? And I think it's been really important for the entire marketing and creative team to really continue to sit with our brand differentiation and what customers, right, and the market kind of expects from Typeform is that human first interaction.
Yeah.
We had released a study about how marketers feel about AI earlier in the year. And I think even taking some of that feedback, right, and continue to have that context when we think about reaching that marketer ICP of how they're feeling about AI, then really pressure testing our messaging and positioning against the emotional, perception and how AI is helping them in their job daily, but then what are they also afraid of? And then thinking around how to kind of bridge that connection with research flow. Because ultimately
Yeah.
it's about, well, how do you give marketers this context? One thing that we talked a little bit is like this squeaky wheel bias that I think all marketers can fall into. I think we're kind of trained to be as close to our customer as possible, right? And so you want to be able to talk to customers. I know it's always been a big thing that I've seen in multiple roles that I've been in. The leadership is like, I sit down with a customer weekly and I talk to the customer. You're getting one piece of feedback,
Yeah.
right? You're not getting feedback at scale. And so the squeaky wheel bias, the challenge is you may be listening to the loudest voice or like customer reviews, right? You're listening, typically customers write a review because they either absolutely love something or absolutely hate something, right? You're not necessarily getting what does your market at scale, what does your customer at scale really think about that? And that's where research flow is really solving that for marketers, is being able to give this context at scale. So you still get the quantitative and your ability to be really confident in I think the scale and where the feedback is going, but then you get all that rich context to say, okay, I see what's happening in the data, but I don't understand why. And I
Yeah.
think that's the game changer with marketers being able to use research flow, is to really understand the why and to make better decisions there. So we're also trying to think about that, right, as we're kind of looking at all of the data we have across, whether it's releasing Typeform AI and growth flow. How do we think about how our customers are using Typeform, and we can use AI and research flow to kind of mash it all together and sit there and say, how do we actually now go to market in a way that's going to resonate?
Yeah, it's really important. And you're right. You have a very human brand
We do.
from the beginning, one question at a time, and how it's not about just AIing everything. It's that enablement piece. It's interesting, the surface where you can engage with the product. I don't know. I didn't look deep enough into it, but is there an MCP or any access that I can get to Typeform data through Claude or any other LLM?
Yes. So we are actively working on that. That's a big strategy for us. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and in general, that's obviously a big strategy for us for discoverability, right? And
Yeah.
customer awareness and acquisition. So yes, that's something where I think we have our product team is very attuned to that. And so we've been working closely between product and marketing to say, okay, what is the best use cases and how do we bring this to market as quickly as possible?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's common. I mean, there's so many brands that learn from through in a coding session, actually in it. And I'm asking, look, I need a email platform, or I need a database platform, or I need a form generator or whatever, or I need a research assistant. And there's some brands like Resend is a great example for email. They've figured out a way, it's Supabase for database. They've figured out a way to get the coding agent to mention you. And I think there's something really powerful about the back end tables you have of survey data and research data, and being able to query that in a surface that's not the application itself, but in Claude or something like that. It seems like where the future's going.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask about the site. The site's great. It's beautiful. The new products on there. You do have a little chat box. I think it's TY is called Ask TY.
Mhm.
Um, and I was wondering how that's working for you. What's fueling it? Is that tied into sales? Does it work to have one of those on the site, especially as early as you are in some of these products?
Mm-hmm. That is also a relatively recent development. And I would say I have history in this, and I think that's a good tie into thinking around also um, what have been kind of all the different kind of tools available to marketers, and
Hmm.
how I think AI and kind of research flow kind of changes that. So yes, so very early days. So that it's really thinking around how is the customer behavior in terms of shopping for. So we talked about MCPs, right? Is going to, I think, really disrupt how our customers are using the product. I think that's also our customers are discovering, researching, finding out, right? Educating around products. Definitely seeing that chatbots help to kind of tighten the funnel a lot, and so that actually is for both self-serve reasons. So instead of browsing potentially maybe a couple pages, it's a way to really, aggregate. So it's to have your own kind of AI agent right on the site to say, okay, you have this question, let me aggregate this information for you and share it up to you. Or being able to connect you with sales. And I feel like it's a pretty common and paradigm now across the different
Yeah.
the SaaS websites. But I think that actually was kind of an early application, I think, of how I had been using AI in previous roles. Is we had all this rich data from the chatbots.
Yeah.
So, it's a combination of, you could, as a marketer, when you're trying to get closer to your customer, you can sit on a lot of calls, with the sales team, right? Talking to customers. That's changed a lot of times in terms of all the tools to be able to aggregate it. You can do the same thing in terms of how you're seeing on the self-serve funnel, what's happening on the chatbot and being able to get you more web data, or maybe there's a web intercept. You can consolidate it. But I think then Research Flow basically puts it all in kind of one tool. And then you can action off of it too. So it's just kind of incredible how much richer, right, all of this context is.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Now our challenge is going to be, how we now act on it, and how do we kind of consolidate? And you want to talk a little bit about kind of like workflows and things like that as well. But yeah, it's incredible how much it's changed only in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's really, and there's so much context because you have your chat bot, you got the research data that you have your Gong data or however else you capture the sales data. There's just so much in it now that sort of gives a lot more context, and then pulling that all together and making something, useful out of it is really, that's the challenge, and doing it quick and making the right decisions as a human.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the other thing that, um, when you say kind of we have so much data, right, is it's also then, how do you lean on the right, or how do you have the right type of training to be able to know what to do with that data?
Yeah.
So I think, when I was talking around kind of our research team and kind of our philosophy at Typeform too, I think the difference between having kind of tool versus thinking, all right, I'm going to have kind of different data and different contexts in different places, and then how do I consolidate, and how do I listen to it? Kind of back to that squeaky wheel bias is, even if you're consolidating through through AI, using kind of all of those different pieces of information, where do I actually see the spikes, right? And where do I think about kind of
Yeah.
that qualitative and quantitative? So I think having that kind of expert research guidance built in is going to be that next level for marketers who are not researchers, right?
Yeah.
To figure out where is the context that I do want to listen to versus where is maybe something that's not statistically significant.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like, we work in the supply chain space a bunch, and they have control tower-esque language when they talk about the supply chain. Something
Mhm.
goes wrong here and it spikes, and then this thing happens here. That same type of need, really, probably even more so, is needed in research because we're not professional researchers. We don't know
Yeah.
I don't know what statistically is valid. So if there's some way to enable that using the AI, which I'm sure there is, especially nowadays, that's really useful. I actually hadn't thought I think people are just so used to just chatting with the thing,
Mhm.
um, and getting the answer. But it's almost like a skill based, tell me when something spikes and
Mhm.
something's useful for me. That's a really good use case I hadn't thought of. What's the what's next on the agenda for you as a CMO as you get these product launched? Like, as you look down the next 6 months, as you're getting the things launched, what's on your agenda? This would be helpful for people to hear that might be launching products. They're in market now. Now what?
I mean, Kevin, the work to be done now is to really show the market that Typeform is not the Typeform that they've expected, right? The Typeform that they know, and it's really kind of getting there and telling our story. So, I think tactically it's around, we still want to make sure, right, that we're serving this, incredible customer base with our best in class conversational, like human first forms. But now it's you can do more, right? And so we want to make sure that we get across that message of the form is still so important to running your business. And what that means is, like, right, the data intake is key, but now you can act on all that data within Typeform in a variety of different ways, whether it's, I'm going to grow my business and I'm going to do lead gen and enrichment, and be able to do automations through growth flow, or then with what you talked about with research flow, I can take all of that data and now make decisions, and I can even act on some of those decisions within Typeform. The research flow can create a highlight reel for you to share with, like, leadership. Like, as a marketer, if you're in a bigger company, you're like,
That's
"Okay,
cool.
I've done this, and now I can go share this highlight reel," or I can get
Smart.
we're working on a deck. So, in terms of kind of like thinking about the roadmap and where this goes, it just continues to be more and more all in one.
Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about is like an insights deck, right? And so, once how does research flow will just create this here you go, ready to go, insights. Um, and so the time, both like, feeling like the marketer has now, you really feel confident in your decision, then you also have freed up time now to go work on other strategies, right? And work on
Yeah.
something else, is incredible.
Such a great, the highlights reel is such a great idea. Man, that's cool. Because I'm outputting a lot of stuff. I had to train a junior dev this morning on a thing that was going on that we were doing. And it was very complicated. So I just did an HTML view of it and made
Okay.
it junior dev readable. And we reviewed it this morning. It was better than anything I could have ever done. So it's like
Amazing.
finding new formats to get things synthesized in the context that whatever the person can understand, senior executive, junior dev, junior marketer. I got to look at one of those highlight reels. I got to see what that thing looks like. This sounds really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm imagining like on all trails when you're hiking, there's this little, you can view the like mountain you're going up and where it's going to be. It has little roadblocks along the way, something like that. It's a great idea.
That's a great visual. Yeah.
Yeah. Once when you think about budget allocation and where you can put like channel to launch this as a small, not a very small business, but you still have to be efficient. Are there any things that you rule out? Are there, I don't know, are there any channels or tactics that you'd be like, well, this is where we're going to lean in?
Hmm. This is also the other part of the fun of research flow. I think, in the challenge for me and my team is, this is a product that we think has enormous relevance at market. So it's kind of twofold here with research flow. Is we think this really unlocks and democratizes research for SMBs, and smaller businesses that have never had access
Yeah.
to this type of research, which should be a complete game changer. And then as you think about kind of mid-market and into enterprise, this is a tool that could maybe aid a in-house research team's roadmap. There's never, right?
Mm,
Like, roadmaps are always completely full if you have a
mm.
in-house research team. There's always more questions than you can answer,
Especially now. Yeah. Especially
especially
now.
now.
Yeah.
So it can be a supplement, or maybe can help from a budget perspective, right? It's so much faster, so much cheaper than a traditional research study.
Yeah.
So I think it can unlock and kind of supplement, right, research that's already being done, or actually create this entirely new category that doesn't really kind of exist in an SMB's budget or time. So we're thinking about it in two different ways. And I think with Typeform, historically we've been majority self-serve, and we've got, definitely reach right into a lot of the enterprise and the Fortune 500. But this is kind of about building two different motions now.
Yeah.
And so as a marketer, it's really thinking around, we have really great tried and true, and we've got an amazing kind of PLG engine. Now we've got to think about, well, how do we go and reach kind of from a sales motion, these bigger companies. So yeah, we're definitely thinking around a lot of things to invest and expand into. And so yes, that from a budget perspective, it's kind of all around that mix. But I think it
Yeah.
just goes to continue to iterate. So we've got a lot of
Yeah.
tests coming up in the back half to try to figure out where can we find these customers? 'Cause some of them may not be on Typeform, and how do we sell into the researcher? How do we sell into the marketer? How do we sell into the product manager?
Yeah. And it's and in that category in the enterprise, research is important, but it's probably more like a feature than a large platform. They wouldn't think of it in the way that they're thinking of that they should be thinking about Typeform. It's not it's not like a CRM platform. It's not that level of, it's more of a feature that you use to improve one part of your organization. So it's a really interesting challenge at the enterprise level because they
At
might
the
not
end,
even be thinking
yeah.
about, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I was saying, we have an incredible research team with PhDs, right, on this team that are what we're calling kind of in our ICP, like our expert researcher. Like, this is the
yeah,
team, and they've talked about the fact that this is this just becomes a tool that they can use too. So I think it definitely
yeah,
has extendability into being an enterprise platform that a research team can go in and say, all right, I have 50% more requests from my stakeholders than I can actually manage this quarter. Research flow will now help me actually be able to fulfill all of the requests, right? Maybe and then some, because of how fast I can work now, how much cheaper it is than even going out to any of these market research firms. So we
yeah,
think,
no brainer.
yeah, no brainer.
No brainer in terms of the cost angle. That's great. Well, a lot of things to discuss. I could ask more questions. I want to get through three. We ask every guest on the podcast three questions to create somewhat of a benchmark. You're the second person that I've asked these questions to. So as we get more data, we're going to put more data out on these. So let me ask these questions one at a time, and I'll get your thoughts here. So question number one is, what's one AI workflow you put into production this year that moved a real number, and one that you killed when you said this is not going to work? AI workflow.
So I don't know if we consider this a workflow, but I think what we're really seeing that's moving the needle is the speeding up the time to market to do experimentation.
Hmm.
And so when we think about kind of prototyping, so it's kind of twofold. There's the, okay, how do we
Like
kind of speed to market from a prototyping perspective to just get more creative into market to be able to get more signal, and then get clarity. So definitely on the A/B experimentation side, like using Claude to be able to create prototypes of like the homepage you see right now, right on
Yeah.
typeform.com. That this was one of the kind of experiments and workflows that we did, and so now we're able to kind of start to roll this out kind of across the board and seeing. And really, what I think it is, it's also by prototyping, it's helping us kind of create that shared language between strategy and execution. So we can have a lot of the marketers be able to really quickly say, okay, I'm here are my requirements, here's kind of what I'm thinking, here's the messaging, here's what I'm trying to get across. And so the creatives have a real-time example of what that looks like. And so I think it's cut out a lot of the, okay, I'm saying I'm here and marketers are here, maybe creatives are here, and we're going through several iterations to try to get on the same page. So
Yeah.
that's one
Very
that we've
smart.
seen, through A/B experimentation is definitely moving the needle.
Love it. Well, is there anything you killed? You're like, this isn't going to work.
On the killed side, I think where we're going is more on the how to create more AI workflows. So I think
Hmm.
we're, as I'm sure kind of everyone is now, I think everyone's pretty proficient, and it's probably me in the tech marketing space of like, I'm using AI for a lot of one-off use cases. And so I think what it's less about like what we're not using, but more I think where we want to go is
Oh,
the
yeah.
how do we now like templatize and get everyone on the same page and say, okay, I created this skill, right? Or I created this gem. I'm going to share it with everyone. And this is now how we do X or Y. And we're all going to do it in the same way. And then we actually all have the same information feeding into it as well. So I think that's really more where it's going. And we're trying to figure out how to evolve the one-off, which has definitely sped things up into a much more structured, I think like templatized processes for a variety of use cases.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. So you haven't killed the one-off, but the one-off needs to like move over to be scalable. Like get to the one-off fast so you can scale it into something. I love that. Second question is, what's still stuck in pilot? Something you expected to be running by now that isn't?
This one is very similar to I think the my last example, and maybe my specific example here is when you think about kind of everything we've talked about today of like there's so much in any company, right? There's so much context information, ability for whatever AI tool you're using to be able to summarize all together and give you the output. I am surprised that we haven't, we're working on this, that we haven't evolved our marketing briefing as much
Mm.
as we have. And use that. So one of the things we're working on is we're working on a briefing agent. But when you think about, what's really hard for marketers is how do you take all this information? Some of it's in people's heads, but a lot of it is out there, right, across a variety of different decks, from your messaging and positioning deck to maybe some information of what happened on in a campaign or what happened on this website. You put it all together and say, all right, here's my strategy, right here are my audiences. Um, that's one of our hypotheses of like this has to be something that we can templatize and probably make much richer, right, to be able to move faster in creating amazing creative.
Yeah, I love that idea because we're doing the same thing ourselves. We have a tool called Flow, and we're finding that when we do client strategy, like we have one client who has 26 different brands, and we had to build website strategy and actually build all the sites across 26 sites. And so we created these skills that like gave us this knowledge set around these individual brands, and we used them for the sites. We're looking at it going, oh my gosh, this is like you could ask this brain any question about any brand or a combination of brands. And so we put that in our tool which is also called Flow, which is interesting. It's kind of a agency tool that we created ourselves, And
Cool.
we call it brand intelligence. And so it allows people to not only talk to that brain, but also it um, documents their current brand, colors and types and, pictures and words and that type of stuff. And then you can chat with that brain. So you're onto something there. It's really, we have the same vision is that you should tell the brief that you need an outcome, but the brief should have enough context to where you don't have to do all the things anymore. Yeah, it just
Absolutely.
does a lot of that for you. So really, really cool one. And then the last question is, what's one thing your team won't hand to AI and why?
I'm speaking for this as a people manager. The one thing I won't hand to AI is managing my team, right? Is building the relationships, and then again, coaching and developing marketers. So I think there's a ton that we can hand over from an execution perspective, but when it comes to the strategy and even thinking, I think around how we're even using, right, the AI and automation, I think there's so much from, I mean, it's like our conversation today, right? Like learning, sharing, like swapping ideas, talking about how we're approaching things. And I think that, it sounds kind of like maybe a little cheesy, but I think that's very much everyone that I work with at Typeform, right? When we then we put our money where our mouth is in terms of like what we're developing for our customers and how we want our customers to go out and work with their customers. I think it's the same thing, right? I think we have that kind of philosophy of we need to be human first. By being human first, I think we'll have such an advantage in kind of working and growing and being able to launch these amazing products. But yeah, I think it's that I see as something that will not be handed to AI automation. I think that's so critical for that human connection.
Meet your new manager. It's this AI agent that I've created for you.
Yeah, because you could
We're going to
make it.
tell
You
you
could
what to
say,
do.
"I'm gonna create an AI agent.
That's
Here's
right.
all the to-do list. Just tell me
100%. Yeah.
what you
And
got done," right?
someone's doing that. That's being
Mhm.
done somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
want to know where, but it's not that good. Yeah, that's really good. Okay. So I have one more ask of you. I do an AI roulette question where I'm going to ask my AI robot here to ask you a question. I fed in the brief that we're talking through here and then, your LinkedIn profile. So I don't know what it's going to come up with. So let me just hit
Ooh.
send here. This is, let me real quick. And this is from the AI. So it's in the AI's voice here. Okay. My file says Webflow publishing went from 3 days to 3 hours. Automation did that. Question: what happened to the other 2 days and 21 hours?
Is this giving me a math question?
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, I think you must have, I saw somewhere, or maybe it was in our previous conversation about your Webflow process was a lot faster now. You automated a lot of it. And you talked about like prototyping.
Yeah.
So if you went from 3 hours, 3 days to 3 hours, what are you doing with the rest of the time?
Overhauling the rest of the website.
That's right.
We have a lot
There's
of work
always
to do.
work. There's
There's
always
always
work to do.
there's always work. And, even when we get to the point where we're working on this right now is like continuing to make sure that all of our owned assets, right, reflect our new product lines, right, and our new product vision and our company vision. Um, but then you keep experimenting, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
what's happening in the market, right? Even the composition of traffic's changing so fast that, what may be working in one month is not working in another month. So yeah, you're constantly iterating.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't see work slowing down. Like there's the AI doomers who say that this is going to take all our jobs. And I just think there's going to be a bigger backlog on everything.
I
Just
agree.
more work.
I agree. I mean, if you think about where even we are with the ability to do remote work, right? All of the tools
Mhm.
that were available at our fingertips before, ChatGPT rolled out, right? Like that feels
Mhm.
like so much more work than people were doing 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Melinda, this has been great. I'm really pulling for you guys. I love the product. I'm definitely going to go check it out right after this. People want to follow you or get a hold of someone about the product, where do they go?
That's a great question. Typeform.com. We're on all the socials. And yeah, you can feel free to also reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I'm sure a lot of people will love it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You too. Really enjoyed our chat.
Okay. See ya.